Well, here we go. Here's Permaculture Principle number 1. Which, of course, is observe and interact. Everything you need is right in front of you, when you learn to see good things come to you. First you have to learn to stop and take a look around. Before you intervene, just don't do anything. Yeah, come to all your senses. They'll tell you everything. First you gotta learn to stop and take a look around. Yeah, take a look around. Listen to the sound. Why not take a whiff? You'll see much better if you use more than just your eyes. Yeah. Now you gotta take a step outside, well, or at least pretend to. If you wanna know what your soil is like, yeah, and what is gonna grow. But first you gotta learn to stop and take a look around. Yeah, just take a look around. Get your hands into the ground. Don't be scared of the dirt. It isn't gonna hurt. And if you're braver, you can try the flavor. Well, just get a handful of your land and give it a bit of a squeeze in your hand. Then check out the display. If it stays together, it's probably clay. But if it falls apart, it's sand. Musical ribbon test for you. But all you gotta do is take a look. Read your landscape like a book. Interact, low impact, and get your feedback when you take a little look around. Well, abundance will abound, yeah. Because the problem is the solution. Just depends on your perception. Gotta change yourself before you change the world. Yeah, just take a look around. On the inside and the out. Because when you observe yourself, you see everything else. Make good use of it now, yeah. This is the interact part. You can sing along if you want. The crowd responding doesn't quite work when there's a delay, does it? And the amazing disappearing ukulele.
I know.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlie MGee, and thanks very much, Meg and Permaculture Central Coast for inviting me.
Thank you, Charlie, and thank you for the song to kick us off. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land for the Central Coast. That's the Gurungai, the Awabakal, and the Darkinjung peoples. And Charlie, whose land are you on there?
I'm on Noongar Budja, which means Noongar country, and it's the country between the Menang and Pibbleman people of the southwest of Western Australia.
Oh, thanks, Charlie. And I'd like to pay respects to Indigenous elders past, present and emerging, and to acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and we're on Aboriginal land. Just to let everybody know, we are recording today It's really nice for Charlie, who's a musician, to see your faces. The final recording will be Charlie, not any of us. But if you ask a question, your face will be shown on screen. And if you have concerns about your image being seen, there is the option to stop video down the bottom. That will just stop your face from being seen, but it won't stop you from being able to see the presentation. The other thing, can you please make sure that you are on mute, because otherwise any background noise will, you will suddenly become the feature screen on the video. I'd like to introduce those of you unfamiliar. This is a deaf sign for applause. And a lot of people have been using it on Zoom because obviously we can only hear one person at a time. So as much as it would be lovely for Charlie to be able to hear us all clap our hands, we can't do that. So if you would like at any point to let Charlie know you're loving what he's doing, you can do this. There will be time for questions at the end. We plan on running for about an hour. There's going to be plenty of music involved. And Matt Browett, in the event that my internet drops out, Matt Browett's got the job of backing me up. So without further ado, Charlie, would you like to play us another song?
Sure. So for anyone who hasn't heard my band Formidable Vegetable before, I'll just give you a little bit of a background. I did my permaculture design course in New South Wales 10 years ago with Robin Francis up at Janbung Gardens in the Northern Rivers, and part of the first bit of our PDC was going into, she started going to pattern languages and pattern understanding, and of course permaculture is all about pattern language and pattern recognition. But she had a really cool take on it and sort of told us about the role of music and the arts in permaculture, and that just kind of got the cogs ticking a bit. And when we were sent home to do a bit of homework and come back and present one of David Holmgren's 12 permaculture principles to the class in a non-linear pattern language, my housemate at the time, who I was also studying with, said, "Hey, why don't you write a song about one on the ukulele?" And my first response was like, "Oh, nah, like that's too daggy. Who'd want to hear a song about permaculture on a ukulele? Like, ukuleles are already daggy enough." I mean, I love the ukulele. This is a handmade Jarrah ukulele made for me by a friend when she was 14, her very first uke. And so, yeah, I've always loved the ukulele, but I never saw it as being something that could be a tool for change. I just thought, oh, they're just a fun little instrument, Some people even think of them as a toy. But this was a bit of an aha moment because, learning about permaculture and realizing how important it was, and then having the suggestion to write a song about it, I was like, that's maybe crazy enough to work. So I'll play the first permaculture song I ever wrote on a ukulele. And it's a bit of an autobiography. So to give you a bit of a background, I'm in southwest Western Australia, and I grew up here just about an hour down the road from where I am now, which is Denmark, a small town on the south coast. And my hometown, Pemberton, was where I grew up with my dad. And he was the one who introduced me to permaculture, really. There was books lying around. There was Mollison's Designer's Manual and Holmgren and Mollison's Permaculture 1 sitting around on the coffee table. And I remember flicking through it as a kid and just seeing, chook yard systems with multiple doors going into gardens and trellises over duck ponds, and being like, what is this? This looks cool. And obviously Dad was doing a bit of it in the gardens, and I loved my chickens, and I'd come home every day from school and just hang out with the chickens. I didn't have a TV because we were fully off grid. This was the 90s, so being off grid was definitely not normal. And solar panels were a lot more expensive then. But so this song is a bit about that, and based around the principle of produce no waste. So it's thinking about when we live these low impact and off grid lifestyles, I guess it makes us a lot more conscious of the things that we use and conscious not to waste stuff. So this is a little bit of that journey. It's called No Such Thing as Waste. When I was a little kid, I liked to catch the rain, while my friends around the town let it flow right down the drain. But our tiny house in the trees had one thing that we drank, every drop that we had saved in our rainwater tank, 'cause there's no such thing as waste. Only stuff in the wrong place. No, there's no such thing as waste. When we treasure every trace. Well, I moved to the city, rented a house on my way to buy a bed. But I saw one lying on the side of the road, so I took that one instead. And I also found a fridge, a couch, and a big old sewing machine in the biggest pile of thrown out stuff that I had ever seen. But there's no such thing as waste. Whoa, no. Only stuff in the wrong place. Yeah. No, there's no such thing as waste. Oh, better save it just in case. A true story, down the track I found out that diesel cars can run on veggie fat. So I bought a truck and hit the road, smelling like fish and chips. I rescued piles of wasted oil from the back of restaurants and said I'd be a fool if I bought my fuel when there's oil nobody wants. Why? 'Cause there's no such thing as waste. Whoa, no. Only stuff in the wrong place. Yeah. No, there's no such thing as waste. That whole idea's gotta be replaced, yeah. 'Cause we gotta refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, then renew. Move over, recycle, it's renew. I said refuse, reduce, reuse, repair, then renew. Now I get my things out of garbage bins and I compost every crumb. Save all the seeds, eat garden weeds, and give the rest back to your mum. It's time we thunk that all our junk to keep our planet clean. 'Cause that W word is so absurd in a world of blue and green. 'Cause there's no such thing as waste. Oh no. Only stuff in the wrong place. I said there's no such thing as waste. Only opportunity to be embraced. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Fabulous, Charlie. Thank you so much.
No worries.
You're really well known for the songs, and I know that via your music you've introduced a lot of people to permaculture. Why is it that you think music's such a great vehicle for sharing knowledge?
Well, I think because, like Robin was explaining to us in the pattern session that I was telling you about, music kind of taps into something really ancient and fundamental in us. I think, it really is a universal language, and there's arguments that spoken language evolved out of music, or that spoken language is a kind of music that we've all just sort of learnt together. But actual, I guess, melody and rhythm is something that just sort of really gets to us emotionally, as well as physically when we dance, and on all these other levels that just speaking and writing can't. And as a musician, I always knew there was more to it. In our dominant culture, it's been kind of reduced to this aesthetic, like hedonistic sort of just decorative thing. Music's just for like having fun and dancing and going down the pub to listen to. But traditionally, in a lot of cultures, it was like a fundamental part of culture. I mean, you look at the culture in Australia, like it was based on music. All Aboriginal cultures, all traditional cultures around the world had music as a core part of education, of knowledge holding, of cultural exchange and communication, and survival. Music really was a way to ensure the survival of a culture by having a way to transmit information that people would remember. And I always bring it back to, like, the only example that I can think of in our culture, one of the few, is the TV jingles, which, geez, like, what have we come to? And that's all we've got left of this kind of mnemonic form of music, where I can remember the phone number from the pizza delivery shop, but I can't remember, a list of plants in my garden, or some things to eat. So yeah, I really, that was the aha moment that I had after my permaculture course. Was, I went in there expecting to come out as an awesome gardener and a designer and a compost expert, but I actually came out a musician. I went in a musician and I came out a musician, but with a renewed sense of purpose, and I guess knowledge and just hunger to kind of know more about this practice that I was already doing, which I think is a really powerful thing about permaculture, right? It kind of takes what we already have and it just allows us to do it more effectively or in an ethical way.
Yeah, it's a great observation. I'm always interested in the fact that Sanskrit and Mandarin are both languages with music in them, so the intonation is as important as the sound. So there's a sense in which they're almost musical. And then when you look at Indian music is used for healing, and it's used for meditation, and it's used for yoga, and it's seen as being integral to life. It's, as you say, it's not just a recreational thing you do on the weekend. So it's really insightful. I know you spent some time chatting with Lynn Kelly in relation to the memory code as well. That must have been pretty interesting.
Yeah, Lynn Kelly is amazing. I've been reading her books for a couple of years now. Her first book, The Memory Code, I heard about on Radio National when she was talking about this idea of indigenous memory systems. And her first book is all about different ways that cultures around the world have used the arts, in general to encode their knowledge. And now she's moved more into an Indigenous Australian kind of context, working with Margot Neal from the Melbourne Museum, I think, or the Victoria Museum, on the Songlines exhibition that they've been curating in conjunction with elders and people from all over Australia, mostly in the desert and the remote areas. But going into this idea of, it's kind of, it's on so many levels. There's like a reconciliation level, and there's like a cultural evolution level, and it's sort of inviting a participation between, people who are living a more traditional culture and people in the more dominant culture to kind of merge the two thinking systems. So in the dominant culture, we've got science and we've got Western philosophy and ways of thinking, and that's sort of what we're taught in school and everything. In the more traditional systems, there's song and story and song lines, which we hear a lot about, Aboriginal, Indigenous song lines. And I guess, I didn't even really have a concept of what a song line was, but Lynn Kelly's been working with Indigenous groups for a long time, sort of studying them and talking about, what they are. And they're this, from what I gathered from her book, they're this really practical tool of encoding knowledge into the landscape through culture. And so she's been experimenting and practicing these different techniques, not just from Australian culture, but also from around the world of encoding memory. And she uses everything from these these African sort of memory boards with shells and beads on them to trace a path, which then triggers a list of species in a bird encyclopedia or something, to actually walking and writing her own song lines around her own neighbourhood in Castlemaine in Victoria. So she'll go for a walk. In her first book, she talks about going for a walk with her dogs and encoding figures from history or biology books or encyclopedias into just mundane elements of the landscape. So, the power pole on the corner of the street, or the neighbour's letterbox, or the crack in the pavement. And so she populates these physical places with knowledge and ideas and data that you'd never remember otherwise by just reading a book. It'd be really hard to remember just raw data. But she sings kind of silly songs, and she comes up with these outrageous images or these dramatic sort of scenes in her mind, and then places them in sort of Western culture. There's a thing called a memory palace, which some people use, like card counters in casinos and things like that, which actually has proven to be a way to remember huge amounts of information. So yeah, Lynn Kelly is fantastic and fascinating, and I really recommend checking out her book, The Memory Code, or Memory Craft, which teaches you how to do this kind of stuff. I'm just scratching the surface, so yeah.
It reminded me very much of nursery rhymes, and I know you mentioned advertising, but also nursery rhymes that pretty much, I can start singing a nursery rhyme on a course, and anyone who's come through the same culture remembers the same song. And one of the things we did recently was to get people not from our culture to sing a nursery rhyme, and they're all these moral tales, they're all things to remind you of things that are important as children, and you never forget them. So it's great to see music being reinstated to its significant place in our culture. I think that's a happy thing.
Well, it's sort of like a bit of an anti-capitalist move too, isn't it? Because music's been just hijacked by the industrial capitalist system as another thing to sell. And so artists and musicians are now these people who are just expected to produce stuff that can then make it big and then make heaps of money for advertisers, and that's not the point at all. And it's no wonder there's so many just, starving artists and musicians just wondering what the point of it all is, because it's just been eroded away. And I think we really need to reclaim that as artists and musicians as well. So permaculture gives a great avenue to kind of go there.
Yeah, it's interesting that when people talk about, survivalist type games, which people are going to hold on to, we'll keep the doctor, we'll keep this, we'll keep that, or why would we need a musician? You go, no, the musician's really important. You're not going to be able to remember anything without the musician. Can we get you to go through give us a sample of just a few of your songs for people unfamiliar? Choose a few favorites for me and give me a little bit of a sample, and then give me a little bit of commentary on what it is you love about that song.
So, well, I guess the first, so the No Such Thing as Waste song was the first in what turned into an album based on Holmgren's 12 Permaculture Principles, and it was really coming from that desire to remember these principles, and it was mostly just for my own benefit. I'm just like, well, I need a way to remember them, so how can I do it? And I thought, well, why not write some songs about it? So so they're really my favorites, and I think my next favorite song is one on there called The Edge, because it's about my favorite principle, really. The use edges and value the marginal principle just sums up so much about my life. And again, this is a little autobiographical about sort of trying to navigate the 2008 rental crisis in Fremantle, Western Australia. Some people tell me that I'm crazy, 'cause I do things that don't fit in with the rest of society. Like my love of small spaces, my room ain't too large. I just live in a box underneath the house, off the corner of my garage. But the edge is where it's at, and it's easy to create. And my mama always said, if you're not living on the edge, then you're taking up too much space. So anyway, to cut a long story short, that might not sound very permaculture-y, but I kind of start out with these little stories to kind of, be like, oh, what's this about? And then I've tried to kind of incorporate, some more traditional, like, permaculture techniques and strategies, I suppose, in an attempt to encode some actual knowledge in there. So I had things like, I might wind up in the desert with whipping wind and sun, but I'll just plant me a hedge, and I'll start that edge, and I'll have sorted two things with one. Oh, but if the rain is falling and washing everything away, well, I'll slow down that water with a convoluted border, and everything gonna be okay. 'Cause the edge is where it's at. We've gotta work that interface. 'Cause my mama always said, if you're not living on the edge, then you're taking up too much space. So it's kind of a way to, like, the principle is the main thing that, thanks, that I wanted to remember. So anything that helped me to remember the edge, use edges and value the marginal, I just chucked all that into a bunch of lyrics. And at the end of the day, the take-home message is the principle. But there can be all kinds of other little messages in there as well that you can sort of read into as much as you like. And, you know, that's one way to do it. But another way that I tried in my next album, which is more of a kids album, which we called Grow Do It, was, you know, I made a little experiment to see if I could encode a recipe for one of my favourite ferments into a song. And again, it's like they're all very silly on the surface, but I'm trying to kind of like put a few layers in there. But this one's pretty straightforward. It's about kimchi. It's good for me. Yes, it's the best stuff that I eat, I guarantee. Kimchi, so good for me. Well, I wanna make it for my friends and my family. So all you do is you get a daikon radish with some cabbage finely diced. Then you chop a bit of chili with the garlic and the ginger to crank it up with spice. Then add saltiness, sweetly caress it to give it a good massage. Then when I see that water rise, I stuff it inside a jar. Yeah, we'll stuff it inside a jar. And just stuff it inside a jar. Kimchi! When it's ready, you wanna leave it out on your bench for about a week. Kimchi! When it's ready, well, you know that your whole kitchen's really gonna reek. Woo. Be careful when you try and take a peek. But kimchi is that flavor that I seek. So that's an entire recipe for kimchi in a silly song form. And I still, whenever I'm going to buy kimchi ingredients or harvest or wherever I'm going to get it from, I run through that song in my head. I'm like, if I've got everything, okay, garlic, ginger, yeah, cabbage, daikon. And so it's just like the nursery rhymes, right? It's something that it just comes automatically. And yeah, I'm only just getting started. Like, this is fascinating.
I'm loving. So now I'm thinking, what are my favorite recipes and how do I put them to music? It's a great. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? You know, it's so much easier to remember something if it's rhyming or if it's musical.
So much.
It's a pattern. It was interesting your comment on edges. We had Marcos commented. We had Brett Cooper do a presentation on edges for us this week as well. And everything you were singing about was absolutely spot on. He talks about edges in terms of social edges and edges in relationships and edges in, you know, people who don't live mainstream type lifestyles. And I know when we were in Brisbane this year, we met the Permaqueer team who talk about how socially they're on an edge and they have a perspective that's very unique.
Yeah, I love those crew.
Yeah, they're really great. So another one, Charlie, give us another favourite.
Oh, well, what do we got? So, well, I went from doing the 12 Permaculture Principles in the first album, which I'll just put a link there if you want to have a listen to it. It's up for free to listen to, or you can buy it if you want. But then I thought, well, you know, what about the Permaculture Ethics? We really need an ethics song at least. And so my third album, which we put out in 2019, I kind of tried to focus around the ethics of earth care, people care, and fair share. And just go into some different facets of what that meant to me. And I guess in some ways it was a bit more personal. It was a bit less sort of cerebral and like, how can I encode this complex information? I started being a bit more songwritery about it. And I've been reading at the time a lot of, books about colonization, and like Bruce Pascoe's Dark Emu was a big influence on this one. Because, yeah, I guess I was trying to find my place in this country that we call Australia, and down here there's many names for it, but some of them have been lost, and some of that culture has just been wiped off the face of the earth. And I was sort of trying to reconcile that and thinking, well, what can I do as a white fella? Like my ancestors have caused this problem. The first thing I guess I can do is to recognize it and start talking about it and start thinking about it. And in terms of the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share are really kind of universal in their scope. And again, a lot of cultures around the world, I think, have held them in some form as a core part of their sustainable culture, of their permanent cultures. I mean, some of these indigenous cultures are the oldest in the world, and there's a reason for that. So, you know, I on that level, I wanted to recognise, you know, the indigenous culture of this land, but also to kind of pay respects to indigenous culture everywhere for holding on to this knowledge and making that link between permaculture, which isn't a new thing in a lot of ways, which has stood on the shoulders of these ancient cultures that still exist and are still, you know, in some ways screaming to be heard, for us to try and synthesize that into the dominant culture. So this one sort of became a bit of a permaculture manifesto for me. It's called Earth People Fair, and that was the title of the album. And the first verse sort of sums it up. You know, it was pretty personal too, because I guess in a lot of ways I'd been traveling around singing songs about permaculture and playing at big festivals, you know, going all over the world. And it just started to kind of get to me, and I was like, what am I doing? I'm singing and talking and, you know, soapboxing about all this stuff, but what am I actually doing in the ground? And all I wanted to do was to get back to a piece of land, or, you know, get back to home and put some food in the ground and start regenerating the soil and start doing what we sort of traditionally think of as permaculture, even though I think it's a lot broader than just, you know, working with the earth, but that's a fundamental part. So I want to see myself as a part of the whole, grow some food for my family food bowl, stand my ground but give up control, know the boundaries but tear down all the walls, won't give up or give in to apathy, gonna plant a tree then plant another 3,000, now's the time to start feeding my soul, feeding the soil, believing anything is possible. As I get older, some things become clearer. The end of my life is always getting nearer. Focusing on the things that bring meaning. Food, community, love and healing. Been getting tired of all this moving around. Wanna bring it back home to a simple piece of ground. Been talking about it till my mouth is dumb, but all I wanna do is make a deeper connection with some Earth People Fair. Yeah, I've been looking for my Earth People Fair. We'll show you where to find the Earth People Fair. Yeah, yeah, yeah. A stray alien wandering this ancient land. So much of the dream that I still don't understand. Been looking at you, but I'd rather see you and follow the path of that old dark emu. Someday my body's gonna breathe its last, yeah, I'm aware that this too shall pass, but till then I'll keep singing to the open air, hoping there's time to advance Earth People Fair. Earth People Fair, hey yeah, get together with you, Earth People Fair. Well, let me hear it for the Earth People Fair, hey yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's the abbreviated version anyway. The Permaculture Ethics sort of tried to, you know, trying to condense them into a song. But yeah, you know,
it's a big ask, isn't it? It's
yeah, just a bit. It's a lot to kind of try and fit into one thing. But
so lately, branching out a little bit, doing some of your own stuff. Would you like to share where you're at with that?
Yeah, so I guess well, you know, I kind of forked off after that point, because that album, you know, while it was still firmly based in the permaculture ethics, I guess at that time, you know, early 2019, and then going through that year, I jumped on the Adani Convoy that year with my partner Brenner and a few other crew in the permaculture scene, Kat Lavers and Ruby Thorburn from up your way, and you know, we took off to kind of try and do something, you know, about the climate crisis. And I guess I've never really been, I guess, a traditional activist in the common sense of, like, you know, locking onto things and shouting and screaming and jumping up and down. But at this point, I just thought, well, what else is there to do? You know, this massive coal mines going in, they're going to pump all this CO2 in the atmosphere. Like, we've got limited time. You know, the IPCC report had just come out, and I had a little bit of a, like, well, there's nothing left to do but this kind of moment. And you know, I guess I still kept writing songs, and a lot of them were still this kind of happy, positive, we can do it permaculture stuff. But then some of them just started going down this sort of grief road, and sort of synthesizing the feelings around the destruction of our biosphere and the loss of biodiversity, and you know, the changing of the climate, and just the rampant kind of greed of corporate, you know, the corporate world that's leading to all of this. And so I started writing a bunch of these songs, and they turned into another project which I had to separate from Formidable Vegetable, because it was a little bit too dark and stormy, and a little bit too personal as well. I felt like maybe, you know, for me it was a really healing process, but I felt like compared to the Formidable Veg project, which is all about kind of developing this kind of knowledge system and trying to work with this global movement, this might have been seen as a bit more sort of self-indulgent or whatever. But you know, I think some people get something out of it. But yeah, I'll share a tune with you if you want. It's not all dark and stormy, but again, some of it's just about that feeling of like loss of connection to the land and to country.
Hi,
through.
I'm listening to the Fluff and Got Bread.
Sorry?
Oh, what's that? Oh, I think somebody's not on mute. Libby, were you asking a question, or are you just on?
Sorry.
Oh, that's all right. I thought you were asking something. No worries. Anyway, I'll play this one, which is kind of about traveling around for 7 or 8 years and just getting a little bit disoriented. Get around. Flying through the looking glass. Hang on. It's the wrong verse. It's been a while since I played this one. Still out on this journey, looking for the master plan. But my windscreen is so dirty that I can't see where I am. I somehow keep on coming back to where it all began. A little older and a bit more scattered. Flying through the looking glass, spreading my beliefs. I'm aware of underlying bitter irony. 'Cause when I land, I hit the fan, watch out for my debris. When I see that old reflection shadow. Well, the storm comes, I fill my sails, chasing the sun. Don't wanna stay to feel the rain, but it'll get me in the end and bring me down. But for now, I guess I'll get around. Have I still got you? Are you still there? Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, I thought I'd lost you. You're all frozen on my screen.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Keep playing.
Breaking slowly at the seams, picking up the pieces, rearrange my dreams, but the mystery increases. These patterns are attractive, and they can be so hard to break. Try to deny it, but the fact is, I gotta own what I create. I gotta own what I create. Well, the storm comes, I fill my sails, chasing the sun. Don't wanna stay to feel that rain, but it'll get me in the end and wash me down. 'Cause someday I won't be able to get around.
Fabulous, Charlie. Thank you. Yeah, our video is getting a little bit sticky. You'll be pleased to know that from our end, the audio is still great.
Oh, that's good. Everyone's frozen for me here. I don't know if it's my end, but
No, it may well be, but the audio is
As long
still
as I'm still
sounding.
coming through.
Yeah, you're still coming through.
Beauty.
You're just doing that thing.
No worries. Awesome.
So, Charlie,
Well, I've lost. Sorry, you go. I've just lost you all here, but as long as you can hear me, I guess that's fine.
Yeah, we can hear you, and I can still see you. It's been a rough time for musicians and for live music in particular. What do you think the future's going to be for live music?
Look, I don't know. I guess after 2019 happened, I actually had a bit of a moment. What John Michael Greer, the famous post-peak oil philosopher, has this book called Collapse Now and Avoid the Rush about the energy descent scenarios, and I kind of took that to heart a little bit. I thought, I can't keep flying around the world and justifying this fossil fuel use just to get up on a stage and talk about and sing about permaculture. I mean, people came to me and said, "Oh, but it's such a great thing you're doing, and the world needs it." And on one level, like, I understand that, but on a personal level, I just couldn't justify it anymore. So I more or less pulled the plug in a global sense at the start of 2019, which turned out to be a pretty auspicious move, given 12 months later what happened in the global pandemic, and suddenly nobody can tour around the world or go overseas. But at that stage, I cancelled Glastonbury. We'd been offered to play all these massive international festivals and had a world tour booked, and I said no to most of it, and then said, look, I'm only going to get around if it's in my veggie oil powered house truck, which I just finished building. And so I drove that, over east, powered by waste veggie oil from fish and chip shops, and drove that up on the Adani Convoy, and then came back with the intention of settling down and relocalizing. And so for me, I guess I saw the writing on the wall years ago with respect to the music industry as an industry being unsustainable and unviable in its current kind of globalized form. And so I never really seriously had the ambition to be a rock star on the world stage, which a lot of people that I know, a lot of musicians that peers with, do and have succeeded in that world, and all power to them. But I guess looking to the longer goal, I'd always had it in my mind that I wouldn't be able to do this forever, the touring around and playing massive gigs part, but that I wanted to kind of keep looking beyond that and seeing if there were ways that music could be more relevant in a localized, in a relocalized world. And now we're seeing exactly that. Musicians who relied on massive world tours and massive, sort of international audiences are struggling. But we're also, on the flip side of that, we're seeing more and more local events supporting artists. And I mean, at the moment it's difficult on the East Coast because everyone's in lockdown and you can't have real life events. But even something as kind of boxed in and limited as Zoom gives us the opportunity to still reach those audiences internationally and interstate that we wouldn't have had before. And I started live streaming in 2019, and people were like, "What, live stream gig? Like, who's ever heard of that?" It was sort of like, and then 12 months later or less, it was sort of like, oh well, it's kind of the only thing we can do now. But yeah, as far as making a living off music goes, I don't really know what the future of that is, because in March last year I had an entire year's worth of gigs around Australia and workshops just evaporate in one go, and lost 40 grand worth of work. Like, that was the entire year for me, and they've trickled back in since being back in WA. I've been really lucky. I've been able to do some live gigs, but nothing like before. So I just have to kind of have faith and trust that if I keep kind of cultivating community and working with the people that I'm close to and working in a more localized sense, that something will eventuate, and I'll still be able to have music as a relevant part of that. But yeah, it's a bit of a question mark at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And I'm always impressed when Maura Gamble teaches permaculture livelihoods masterclass. And one of the things she talks about is that the principle around diversity applies to how we earn money. That whole "don't put all your eggs in one basket" idea, that these days for younger people, and we're seeing it on our courses, for younger people in particular, many of them have 3, 4, sometimes 5 different sources of income, because that's what gives them security. That if they lose one job, they've got the others to back up. And that's a very different life to the one that people in our age group grew up in, where you join an organization and you work 5 days a week. So it's a big shift.
I suppose I've been lucky in a way, because I've always been a musician and I've always been in the gig economy, which now more and more people are in the gig economy, and they're like, what? Our rights and our holidays and all this. I'm like, holidays, rights, superannuation? What the hell's that? So I guess I've had some training over the years to live on a shoestring budget and, dumpster dive for my food and sleep on someone's couch or camp out. And, now I live in a truck, so that's like a palace. But not everyone's cut out for that lifestyle. So I definitely recognize that it's not an easy situation for a lot of people.
Now, Charlie, I wanted to let people know there's a wonderful, it's Happen Films, isn't it, that have done the short film on the truck?
Yeah. I might have it there. I've just put it in the chat if you want to watch it. Jordan came and did a little film with us last year in lockdown, so we couldn't really go anywhere, but it was fun. So if you want to see the veggie oil truck, check it out.
Yeah, so for people unfamiliar, Charlie's not kidding. He's actually retrofitted a truck that runs on vegetable oil, and when he calls into a new town, he'll go to the local fish and chip shop and take their old oil, and he has a system on his truck to convert that into diesel. So it's about as permaculture as you get, Charlie.
Well, for a big fossil fuel powered machine, yeah.
Now, you're also a designer. You're not just a musician. You're also a permaculture designer. What are you designing right now?
Well, we've taken on a massive project, actually. Brenna and I, who you probably saw last week, my partner, have just moved to a permaculture eco-village in southwest WA. And we're working with the community, on a lot of, mostly a social level at the moment, to kind of try and work on sociocratic decision making and kind of a bit more of a permaculture aligned governance system, because they've been established for a while, but there's been a lot of new people come in and they're still working out systems. So we're super excited on the social permaculture side of that. But on the land-based side, yeah, we've got a little 1/4 acre strata lot, which is next to a 1/2 acre common lot. So it's a strata title, but with about 40 acres, 60 acres in total, but 40 acres of common land. So it's this really interesting situation where we have our private property, even though I don't really fully believe in that concept. But anyway, we've got our little 1/4 acre lot, and next to it we have the commons, which is written into our strata agreement that it's for the use of, for permaculture use. So for any activity that abides by the permaculture ethics and principles. And I just thought, oh yes, like when I read that, a bylaw that says we have to practice permaculture, awesome. So we've been working with our little neighborhood of about 4 or 5 houses to kind of vision and get a bit of a holistic context, using sociocracy and also some of the holistic decision making processes that Dan Palmer kind of has been pushing, and to get a bit of a common vision to design an entry statement, which is that's kind of what it's slated for on the plan of the community. But we want to create a permaculture demonstration site not too dissimilar from something like Meliadora, where it's a residence. It's a home, but it's also a livelihood for the people who live there, and it's also an educational site. So not necessarily like a full power productive, like let's feed everybody garden food forest, but something that has a little bit of a whole load of different systems that can show how people can create this on different scales. So we'll have, a fruit and nut orchard, we'll have a chicken system, we'll have ducks, we'll have goats, and hopefully a teaching space that we can run courses from and workshops for the community. And not just our little community, but the wider community, because there's currently no one in the Great Southern region teaching permaculture, teaching PDCs. There's some permaculture courses at TAFE in Albany, but there's no PDC in this area. So we're really excited to start doing that eventually, and it will be fantastic to have a purpose-built or purpose-grown site that people can see permaculture in practice. And a lot of people in the community are really for the idea. They're right behind it, and yeah, it's really exciting. So it's a collaborative process. I don't feel permaculture design is something I can do individually. You know, I know some people see themselves as designers, and they're like, right, let me go and do a client interview and I'll write down all the things and I'll draw a map and then here you go, here's your design. But for me, it's much more of a collaborative consultation process, and coming in as a new resident to a community, you know, I don't feel comfortable with going and be like, I'm a permaculture designer, here, let me design your community. You know, it's really like this humbling experience of like getting the history and the backstory, of which there is a lot, and synthesizing that in a way that we can find out our strengths and our abilities and work with that to form something tangible on the ground. So it's super interesting, and I'm learning so much. But yeah, Brenna and I are having a great time, and that's sort of our design process, I guess, at this stage.
It's so interesting, Charlie, and from the perspective of someone who is a permaculture designer, I think the process you describe is good designing. I don't think anybody who goes in saying, I'm the permaculture designer, let me tell you what you need, is going to be a very successful designer. I think all good design is exactly what you're describing. It's this collaborative approach, and you would know I'm also big on building community, reconnecting community geographically. I think that's the future. The future is we're all going to rebuild local, essentially we're going to have eco villages everywhere. They're just going to be suburbs. We're going to translate them. We're getting near the end of our hour, Charlie. I'm going to get you to sing another song and invite everybody. Have a thought. If there are any questions you would like to ask Charlie before he goes, if you could put those into the chat, please, while Charlie plays us another song, and then there'll be a little bit of time for questions after he's given us another tune. Thanks.
Cool. I've just chucked a little link there if you want to hear some more music online or you want to download any. So yeah, that's all our Formidable Vegetable stuff. But I'd like to put it out to anyone if you've heard Formidable Vegetable before, or if you have a request. I saw some cool dancing happening before and over there. But yeah, so does anyone have a permaculture principle they'd like to hear sung? Feel free to turn your mic on and shout out a request if you want. Otherwise, I'll just pick a random one. Either way, happy. All right, how about this one? So, this is the principle number 3. To obtain a yield, which you'll notice this background that I'm up against is a bit of a broccoli forest and bit of a permaculture pastiche, but this is actually the background from the music video of this song that we had animated back in 2013. And of course, obtaining a yield is about, you know, getting a good harvest and growing some food and feeding yourself and filling your belly, but I see it also as about filling your cup sort of on a maybe more spiritual level, on, you know, a right livelihood kind of level. So for me, obtaining a yield isn't just what we can harvest or obtain, you know, sort of in a extractive sense, but more of that sense of being connected and yeah, like you said, Meg, being part of community and giving back as well. When we give back, we receive. So that's sort of what this is about. If you work all day from 9 to 5 and come home feeling half alive and never see your kids and wife, then I've got news for you. There's no point doing what you do unless it's somehow good for you. You've got to get a result or two in the form of something real. Now if you're feeling stressed and not the best and have trouble finding happiness, well, here's one thing I will suggest. Obtain yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield. Sustain your energy. Don't drain yourself. Maintain yourself. Obtain yourself a yield. Because money's not the only yield. You could be making a bigger deal about what you eat for your next meal. You can't run on an empty tank. Ignore the stash of cash in your pocket. Just make a salad with some homegrown rocket. You just have to go out the back and pluck it. No need to go to the bank. You got to work your days for stuff that pays, in not just money but in many ways. It's time you cleared away the haze and obtained yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield of something you can eat. You can produce some things of use with your own 2 hands and feet. Obtain yourself a yield right in the here and now. Make sure you learn something, turn in, let me show you how. Well, if you're feeling sleepy, then go and have a sleep. And if you're feeling like there's not enough air, then breathe in very deep. And if you're thirsty, then you ought to get yourself a drink of water. And if it's gonna be cold and you're feeling bold, I don't know, shear yourself a sheet. 'Cause in any given moment, there's everything you need. Just look around and it will be found. And obtain yourself a yield. Obtain yourself a yield. But take only what you need. 'Cause it's pretty fun when you're getting some, but there's no need for greed. Obtain yourself a yield, and one for others too. Make sure to seal both ends of the deal of what's good for both of you. Well, an easy way to do it is to give stuff to your friends, because the good things you do come back to you, and the yield just never ends. Yeah, the good things you do come back to you, and the yield just never ends. Well, the good things you do come back to you, and the yield just never, ever, ever, ever ends.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I've actually just been translating that song into Spanish for the IPEN, International Permaculture Educators Network in the UK. And so I couldn't help getting at obtén los rendimientos. It's like the Spanish version's like stuck in my head now. But yeah, that's an exciting project in itself.
What a great way to learn a language, learn to sing in it.
I know, right?
I'm also excited that you might be able to offer the world's first musical PDC. That could be pretty awesome.
Oh, look, that's been on the cards for a while. Don't worry, I'm still thinking about that one. And with Brenna and her artwork, like I think together we're brewing something exciting. So yeah, watch that space. Someone just asked about the diesel fuel conversion. I've just posted a link to the forum where I learned everything I know about biofuels. So check that out. The waste vegetable oil section is the one you want to look at. So yeah.
Yeah, that's Marcos. Thanks, Marcos. Does anybody else have a question? You're welcome to unmute and ask the question directly if you don't feel like typing it in.
Can I just ask you to post the link to the YouTube video for the truck as well?
I did that. Yes, just above.
I dropped out, so it's not my chat now.
Oh, sorry. Yep, I'll post it again. No worries.
Yeah, I know you put it before. Thanks. Love it.
There you go.
And I'm a groupie from a past festival where I bought your CD.
Yes, I recognise you. Hi, Lisa.
Hello. Thank you. That's great.
No worries. Anyone else?
This is not really a question. I got a phone call during that presentation. I don't know if you saw me take it or not, but it was a real estate. I put a house on the market last night, and it was a real estate agent giving me an offer. And then I started to listen to your, and it's very, very close to what I think is amazing. And then you started to sing about the yield, and I think I might just take the offer and accept it without trying to bargain, because that's what it's about, isn't it? Like, I don't need the money, and that person wants a home. So thank you very much. Oh,
congratulations. I'm stoked that you've just, entered a new chapter.
Yeah, just like that. So
awesome.
I'm going to go now and do a happy dance and that sort of stuff. But
good on you.
Lovely. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thanks heaps.
Thanks, Meg. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, Bernie. Thanks, everyone. Please feel free to unmute so you can say goodbye to Charlie now before we go. We're right on 2:59. Great timing, Charlie. So anyone else who'd like to unmute just to give him a shout out and a thank you, please go right ahead.
Thanks, Charlie. That was great.
Thanks, Charlie. It was awesome.
Thanks heaps for having me, folks. It's been a pleasure, and thanks so much, Meg, for organising it. I've just posted a couple of links for the music and also our permaculture poster, which Bren and I made with our lyrics and her artwork. So I'm sure you've heard all about that last week. But yeah, thanks so much, and good luck out there with whatever amazing things you're working on. Catch you next time.
I got your beautiful.
Hey, that's the one.
Oh, okay, great.
There's a link to them as well.
Yep.
Thanks so much for your support, and it really, really means a lot. I really appreciate it, and yeah, it's great in these times to be able to keep sharing and keep on spreading the good vibes that we all need. So yeah.
Great.
Thanks,
Keep up
Charlie.
good-
When the world opens up again, we'd love to have you. We've got a really nice hall here with a really nice stage, and we'd really love you guys to come over sometime and play a bit of a gig for us.
Yeah.
When that becomes possible again, I think that would be huge fun.
We will be there. Don't worry. It'll happen one way or the other, sooner or later.
I've got a really good PA.
Yeah, awesome. All right. I'll back the truck up. We'll have a truck gig wherever, hall. I don't care. Let me at it.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you so
Take
much.
it easy, everyone.
Cheers.
See you later.
Bye.